ZeroGuardian plays the Steam library, and today is actually going to be a recurring series of episodes, all focused on Elite Dangerous, is more specifically the Distant Worlds expedition. And so, if you hadn't seen it yet, I did do a show initially on Friday last week. This was a bit outside of my normal schedule. Of course, that was before I actually got things started back up again. So we'll just kind of gloss that over. No need to worry about that. But, anyways, so if for those of you that don't know what the Distant Worlds Expedition is, there is a group of 800 plus commanders within Elite Dangerous, and we're all heading to the opposite sides of the galaxy. And to give you an idea of the distance and time investment and so forth involved, I'm just going to bring up the galaxy map really quick so you can just kind of get a glimpse. All right, so this right here is a single star system in Elite Dangerous, and this is where I am currently. All right, and you can see all these little lines coming out, and those lines are possible locations that I can jump to using my warp drive within the game. And most of these systems are going to be anywhere from a few light years out to up to a little over 35 light years or so. And so, I can kind of zoom out here, and you can kind of see that some of them are kind of branching off. It kind of shows you, where I can go in one or two hops. Or two jumps, but I can kind of look at some of these star systems, and this one, for instance, 22 light years away. I've got another one. Here's 23. That one's 24. We got a 29 light year, and so you can see there's quite a bit of distance involved here, and so far, if I zoom out just a little bit further, you're going to see all of these star systems. These are all star systems I can visit in the game, and some of these stars, in the foreground here, are 150 light years away, and so forth. If I zoom out even further, you can start seeing some nebulas and stuff like that are kind of nearby. Keep zooming out. So now you're going to start seeing some of the populated systems. So you've got Sol over here. That's where, obviously, where all of us are located at. That's where Earth is. You've got several other things. This is what most people refer to in the game as this little section of the galaxy is called the bubble. It's the little bubble of civilization. So now I'm going to zoom out all the way, so you can kind of see the scale that this game has. So you zoom out, and yeah. So that's just this little tiny star system, just barely outside of the bubble is where I am right now. And we're going all the way across the galaxy to a little system that's approximately over here. It's in the little end of this arm right here on the galaxy, and it's really hard to see, but there actually is systems here. If I zoom in, you can start to see there's a bunch of stars and so forth. They're just so sparsed here, or so sparsed out, that there's not a lot of light and not a lot of dust to reflect the light there, and so you don't have these nice little clouds of galactic arms like you do closer to the center. But yeah, so we're going all the way the exact opposite side of the galaxy, over here. And while I don't have the specific system targeted, I can look at some of these, and you can see some of these systems, you're talking 64, 65,000 light years away. And our final destination is a system that we referred to as Beagle Point. It was named that because last year, one of the organizers of this trip did the same thing on his own without anyone else. But at that time, we didn't have the ability to land on planets. And so what we're doing now is we're going to go all the way to the opposite side of the galaxy, but we're also going to be landing on planets along the way and kind of looking at the various systems and so forth that we find. It's going to be really... it's a lot of fun, and in my opinion, it's fascinating. I love this aspect of this game. But so that kind of gives you an idea of the scale. This whole trip, just to get there, will take us about 12 weeks. Part of the reason it's going to take so long is because we have a couple of like established waypoints along the way that we're all kind of having meetups at. We have set times that we're going to be meeting up in certain locations, and in order to kind of emphasize the whole group aspects, and each waypoint will kind of hang around there for a couple of days, and then visit some of the surrounding systems. And so forth. So this whole endeavor is it's pretty remarkable. I am amazed at the turnout that we got. Don't get me wrong, Elite Dangerous has a fair number of users. I think they finally passed the 1 million copies sold mark. Now, obviously, they're not likely to have that many active users because there's bound to be a lot that have purchased the game previously and have stopped playing, or and so forth, or people that might be like kind of come and go. I know I have been that way in a lot of cases. I'll play the game for kind of a burst and then kind of let off and then come back once they've done some updates and stuff like that. I've been having a lot of fun since they released the Horizons update. The ability to land on atmosphereless worlds is a lot. Just adds so much to the game. So many things that you can do. Granted, a lot of it like you kind of have to come up on your own. There's no There's not really any overarching story in this game, and they're not going to. So you're really kind of responsible for making your own fun. In this game, and I actually kind of like that. I think that's it's nice to see a game where the focus is on you playing it rather than you following along with the story that someone else has created for you. It's that same kind of thing that games like Minecraft and stuff like that have. Like there's no set story. You just kind of play the game however you want to and just go off and do your own thing. So that kind of gives you an idea of the scale and the time space. Unfortunately, I have not been able to play a whole lot, so I'm kind of behind the pack. As you can see, people playing right now, all these little green symbols here are other players that are in the private group that we've created. So quite a few of them are well beyond where I am. I believe our next waypoint is right around here. Let's see. Yeah, the Lagoon Nebula. So right here, this is waypoint 2. This is where the vast majority of us should be meeting up on Friday. I may or may not end up doing a lot of group stuff, on the specific waypoint dates. I'm in this trip more because I really wanted to. I like the group aspect, and I've been, there's a TeamSpeak server that we use for voice communication. I've been fairly active on that and so forth. Which actually brings up something else. So last time I did the show, there was apparently some kind of technical issue with the ability for y'all to hear the TeamSpeak. I have fixed that at this point. However, the only people on the TeamSpeak server right now are all in the kind of free chat area, which means there's no moderation. And because of that, I'll probably leave the TeamSpeak out this time at least. Because there's bound to be quite a bit of chat in there, because as you can imagine, several people are bored and so forth, and so the conversations that are occurring in on the TeamSpeak right now have no pertinence to the game or anything along those lines. So I'll probably leave the TeamSpeak server out this time. I might bring it back in a future stream. But I just wanted to use this opportunity to kind of show you the game, show you how the exploration works. I'm hoping to do a little bit more kind of a guide on things to keep in mind when you're going out exploring and so forth. Because, there's this game, they've given us this amazing galaxy, and there's 400 billion, and that's billion, star systems in the game. And you can go visit every single one of them. You can go out. As you can see here, I can zoom in. There's all kinds of nebulae throughout the galaxy map. Like here's one right here. most of these are randomly generated. Now, granted, some of them are ones that we are familiar with, like Lagoon Nebula, Crab Nebula. Most of the ones near the bubble of civilization are ones that we know exist, because they've gone through and they've tried to make things as accurate as possible. With what we know, and then everything we don't know, they've procedurally generated in the game. And so this may be one that is actually known about. It may not be. It depends on visibility and various other different things. So there's but there's like all kinds of nebula to go see. There's all kinds of systems and stars and planets and all kinds of crazy configurations. There's planets. There's for instance, one of the crazier ones. There's a moon that orbits a planet so fast that you can't actually, in the game, you can't actually fly to the moon in its orbit. You have to fly in front of the moon and let the moon come by and its gravity kind of pick you up. And you've got stars that have ring systems around the stars. You've got systems that have 10 plus stars in them. There's just so many cool and fun things to see in the game. So exploration is something that if you're interested in that, I'd highly recommend you check it out. There's a lot of really cool stuff to see, even close to the bubble. I mean, close to the bubble, there's several. Let me get closer to the bubble here. I think I'm too far. Yeah, I am. So, okay. So as you can see here, close to the bubble, like there's the Coal Sack Nebula. You've got Bernard's Loop. You got the California Nebula. You've got the Pleiades. You got the Witch Head Nebula. You can go see Polaris, the North Star. There's all kinds of really cool things to go and see, and you not even have to really go that far. I mean, most of this stuff, if you really put in the effort, you can get to most of it in a day or less even. And so it's there's a lot of really neat things to see and interact with and do. So it's something that I would definitely encourage you to go if you have any interest in the game whatsoever. Now, for those of you that aren't into the exploration aspects of the game, I am starting a Let's Play series on Elite Dangerous, and the very first episode will be this Saturday. I may either be doing them only on Saturdays, and if you haven't seen the forum thread where I'm keeping track of like the schedule and so forth, the Saturday episodes are going to be ones that are not a staple. Like they're not going to happen every week. I'll try to do them as often as I can, but I just can't promise to do 4 streams a week. I've just eats up into my time too much. So, but anytime I am going to do a Saturday episode, it will be announced on the forum. So definitely keep an eye on that. And but anyway, so I'm going to be doing a Let's Play series because I have a second account on Elite Dangerous. And so the second account I'm going to be going through, and I'm going to be starting from scratch on Saturday. I've got the bare basic ship that you start with, 1,000 credits in that account, and that's it. Like that's all I'm going to have to start with. And so that account, I'm going to be doing this Let's Play series where I go through and really kind of show you the game, like how to get started, what are the different types of activities you can do in the game, how do you progress, what are some good ship builds, those kind of things. And so like I'll basically be like aiming for certain points in the game where it's really easy for you to start doing a lot of different things. There's actually quite a bit you can do in just the base Sidewinder once you've done a couple of missions and stuff like that in order to build up a little bit of credits in order to kind of outfit the ship better. But anyways, if you're interested at all in Elite Dangerous, other than the exploration aspects, if you're interested in bounty hunting, if you want to do some mining, do missions, trading, all of these various different things, I'm going to be covering all of that in the Let's Play series. And so I will either be only having those on Saturday, or I might intersperse some episodes of that into my Wednesday stream rather than always doing Distant Worlds, because I do know that the stuff that I'll be showing in the Distant World streams are going to be fairly repetitive, because it's mainly just me going to a system, exploring that system, and then going to the next one. And so if you're interested in that at all, definitely check out the stream on Saturday. That'll be happening at 2 p.m. Central Standard Time. And then lastly, before we jump in and get started on the exploration aspects here, I'm also going to be, I have returned to my normal schedule of streaming. So Mondays and Wednesdays I stream every Monday and Wednesday at 8 p.m. Central Standard Time, and Fridays I'll be streaming. Right now I have it scheduled for 10 a.m. I might end up pushing that back to 11. So this Friday it will be at 10 a.m. But if I run into any scheduling conflicts, it may get pushed forward an hour. And if that does happen, there will of course be an announcement on the forums. So feel free to check that out. And this Friday, I will be playing Rise of the Triad. Anybody who's potentially familiar with old school first-person shooters, like back in like the Doom 2D, Wolfenstein 3D days, will be familiar with Rise of the Triad. It was a game that used the same engine as Doom and Hexen and Wolfenstein and all of those. But it had a slightly different kind of style to it and so forth. Anyway, so I'm looking forward to playing the new kind of modern remake of that game. I think it'll be a lot of fun. It's probably just going to mainly be just like a shoot 'em up style game where you just shoot everything that moves, and so it should be fun, just good kind of old school first person shooter entertainment. So definitely check that out. Again, that's going to be Friday at 10 a.m. Central Standard Time. So all right, so back to Elite Dangerous. So as you can see right now, I am here in Cole 359 sector. Blah 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 blah. That's the scientific name given to that specific system. What that actually means is, so there's a Cole 359 sector. So it's each of the galaxy is split up into different sectors, and then within those sectors there are different mini sections, and those mini sections are signified by the letters and numbers after that. And so that's kind of what that means. So before I can get started with jumping back into this, I need to start planning my route that I want to take out to the Lagoon Nebula. So you can see this is Lagoon sector over here, and I want to make my way towards this. However, one thing that you want to do when you're out exploring in order to find as many undiscovered worlds as possible, because one of the big things you want to do when you're exploring is get your name tagged on new systems. And so in order to do that, the best thing to do, because the vast majority of, and if you'll notice, like if I do kind of a oh gosh, I've gone brain dead, horizontal side view of the galaxy here, you'll notice that most of the other commanders that are on this trip are staying kind of along the galactic plane. And that's not really what you want to do when you're doing exploring in this game. What you want to do is either go slightly above or slightly below the galactic plane. Because as you can see here, there's still plenty of stars out here. There's no need to be directly in the middle. It does make your route longer, but because most people, as you can see right here in this perfect example, since most people stick to that galactic plane, if you go just up or down even just 300 or 400 light years, then you will find many, many more systems that have not been discovered. It's just one of those things where you want to take the route less traveled, and along the galactic plane is the route that everybody takes. And so if you go above or below that, you're going to have a much better chance of finding stars that no one else has found. If we actually come over here and zoom in on my location, and then I'll zoom back out, you'll notice that I'm already somewhat below the galactic plane, but I still want to go further down. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to pan my screen down a bit. Let's go a little bit further. All right, so that should be good. And then I'm going to move forward just a bit. So I'm going to find a star over here, and that's kind of what I'm going to aim for now, is something that is further down, but still moving forward, because I still want to make some progress towards the Lagoon Nebula, because that's my ultimate destination, is this Lagoon Nebula right here. So, and actually, I don't think I've really, let's go further down. Let me zoom out, because that's only 200 light years. Let's go something around 400 or so. Where are we here? 400. That'll be perfect. So I'm going to go ahead and plot a route, and you'll see that it's gone through and chosen a series of planets, a series of systems that I can then use to get to my ultimate destination. Now you'll notice here it's showing a dotted line, but if I come up closer to the beginning, then you're going to see it's a solid line here. Now, the difference here is the solid line is telling me where I can go with my current allotment of fuel. The dashed lines are when I won't have enough fuel to get there. But that's okay, because the great thing is ships in this game can be outfitted with a fuel scoop, which you can then use to scoop hydrogen that is orbiting around the stars because of their immense gravity. And so you can come in close to the stars and scoop up that hydrogen that's just kind of sitting out just outside of their corona. And that allows you to refuel your ship with the hydrogen there so that you can keep going. And so you'll notice I can click on this system here, and I can already tell that it has both a K4 and an M1 class star. Now, if you're interested in classes of the stars, I recommend you read, because this is all based on actual physics. There's some great Wikipedia articles out there, but the nice thing is there's this really easy thing to remember in this game in order to know which stars are scoopable, and that is KGB foam. So KGB FOAM. All right, and so looking here, I see both K and M, so I know on my path along here that there's going to be stars that I can refuel at. And to be honest, the vast majority of stars in the galaxy are scoopable, so you don't typically have to worry too much. Occasionally you'll run into this like pocket of dead stars, and so you want to still keep an eye on your fuel gauge, and I'll show and I can kind of indicate and point that out here in a little bit as I'm traveling along, so you can kind of see like what I'm talking about. But so that's just some of the things that you have to keep in mind. Now, another thing that you can do on exploration is you have the ability to choose different types of routes that you want to take. So right now I have it set on fastest route, which means that it tries to find systems at the farthest that my jump range allows, in order to get me to my final destination as quickly as possible. And so you can see right here, my jump range right now is 36.34 light years. Now, the parentheses here is how far I could go if I had no cargo, no fuel. Now, obviously, with no fuel, you couldn't go, but fuel has weight to it. So, if I could theoretically make a jump without any fuel, then that's how far I could go. Is 37.58 light years. Now, obviously, what I could do is if I wanted to, for instance, go somewhere that was, say, 37 light years away or close to that, I could use up quite a bit of my fuel, therefore getting rid of that fuel weight, and then be able to make a jump on the very low amount of fuel that I have. But you want to be careful doing that. You want to make sure that the star you're jumping to is scoopable if you're going to do that, because otherwise you're going to be stranded. But anyways, back to what I was going to say on the routes. You actually have the option to switch over to economical, and I'm going to go ahead and click that right now, and you'll see my route should recalculate here. At least I think it will. it may not. If I recalculated the route in economical route, then it would find the most fuel efficient route to get to the final destination, and that fuel efficient route would mean that I'd be taking very small jumps. It would mean I'd have to make a large number of jumps. So like right now, right here, and I can actually find out if I exit out of here. So just 1 second. So if I exit out of this, my current route is 13 jumps. So you can see that there on the left side, just under route, it shows 13 jumps to that destination system that I chose. If I switched over to economical, that 13... Oh, and there it went, finally. So now it's economical. So if I go back again, now you see it's 83 jumps. So huge increase in number of jumps. Now, that would mean that I would get a lot more exploration data, but then you have to think of the time investment and how much distance you're going to make. Because I got to get 65,000 light years in 12 weeks, and if I do it economically, there's no way. Like, that would take me a year or longer just going through system to system. It would just take way too long. So, going back to the galaxy map, I'm going to come back here and put it back to fastest route. Now, another thing I can do, and this is because I have some empty cargo, I have empty cargo capacity on my ship. I can actually adjust the number of tons of fuel or cargo I have in order to change the jump range, which is actually really nice because now I could adjust it to full, which would reduce my jump range, my maximum jump range, to 31 according to the guide route. And that would allow me to potentially get a little further and see a few more systems without having to without having to refuel as often, because the further you jump, the more fuel you end up using. And so if you adjust your jump range so that you are underneath your maximum jump range by a significant amount, then it will actually make it much more fuel efficient to get there. So the nice thing about this is I've just adjusted my jump range from 36 light years to 31. And if I click back again, you're going to see now it's 16 jumps. So it's added 3 jumps, but it's being more fuel efficient in the process. And so the nice thing about this is I get a few more systems in my route, which means I can get more exploration data, which means I can tag my name on more systems, and I'll be visiting more systems along the way, but I'm not inundated with this huge number of jumps that like the economical route would cause. So that's just one of those things that you can kind of utilize to help out in your exploration runs. If you want to hit a few more systems but not use the economical route, you want to make sure your ship has some empty cargo space, because then you can adjust that slider in order to decrease your jump range and give you more jumps. Now, one question some people might have is the ship that I'm taking. So if you haven't figured it out already, if you've played the game you might already know, but if you don't play the game, I am flying in a ship that's called the Anaconda. It's one of the larger ships in the game. It's one of 3 actually of the largest ships. The reason I decided to take this ship on this exploration trip was kind of twofold. One is it has the longest jump range in the game right now. So I'm able to make much further jumps in this ship than I would in any other ship in the game. And then secondly, I liked having a large ship because it gives me a lot of internal compartment space in order to set up the ship how I wanted. Now, another really good alternative to this ship would have been something along the lines of like the Asp Explorer. And the Asp Explorer would get you really close to the Anaconda's jump range. However, it's not going to have the internal compartment space, and so you're going to have to be a little more stringent on all the things you're taking, and you wouldn't be able to have as much empty cargo space in it, which means you wouldn't be able to adjust your jump range as much using that technique I just showed you. But at the same time, the trade-off is the Asp Explorer is much, much cheaper. To kit out the Asp Explorer for exploration would cost about 1/10 of what it costs to kit out an Anaconda for the same thing. So that's something you have to keep in mind. So if if you're just starting out in the game and you've worked your way up to like 15, 20 million in-game credits or so, check out the Asp Explorer. It's a fantastic ship. I think its base cost is like 5 million. To kit it out for exploration, you'll probably need to spend another 10 or 15 million on it. And it would give you, a fantastic ship to go off and do, an exploration trip in, even a long distance one. As a matter of fact, of the 800 pilots or commanders in this Distant Worlds expedition, the vast majority of them are taking Asp Explorers because it's a much cheaper option. So more of them have access to it. And, it gives you like 95% of what the Anaconda can do for, like I said, a tenth of the price. So, only reason I did the Anaconda was because I wanted that slightly longer jump range and the slightly better internal compartments. And that allowed me, and I was able to do that because I've been playing the game off and on for quite a while, and so I had built up the funds I needed in order to be able to afford it. So, if you can't afford it, don't feel like you have to take an Anaconda. Asp Explorer, by far and away, is an amazing ship and would definitely work to fit your needs for that. So, anyways, I feel like I've been talking for a really long time here, and I know you're not really seeing a whole lot on screen. So, I'm going to go ahead and so we've already set our route. We're ready to go. But before I head off, if you'll notice, this system that I'm in right now is completely unexplored. So, it's unexplored to me. I'd have to pull up the system map to verify that no one else has seen it. So there's all of these potential targets here. These are all either planets or moons that I could go and take a look at. So let me pull up the system map really quick. And this is something that you'll see a lot because every time I jump into a system, I'll do a really quick scan of the system and then bring up the system map. And so this is a screen that you're probably going to be intimately familiar with if you continue watching my Distant World streams. So as you can see here, I can kind of zoom in, and there's a number of different, kind of types of planets, and kind of a bit of information here. So just really quickly, in case you're not that familiar with the system map in game. So as you can imagine, so you've got your stars here, and there's 2 stars in this system. And then these are all planets that are orbiting that star. And then these that kind of shoot down here are moons of this planet. So this is a moon of this planet here. Now you'll also see these kind of U-shaped brackets on some of these. What that means is that these 2 planets orbit each other. So they're essentially 2 planets that rotate around each other, but then the pair of them orbit around the star. And so... So these 2 planets are going to be really, really close together. Same with these 2. And then this one's even slightly more complicated. So this pair orbits each other, which then these 2 orbit this one, and then these 3 as a triplet orbit the star. And so you'll see this a lot in these systems because it's just the way they end up coming out, just the way they were rendered by the procedural generation. I think it's really cool. There's the amount of variation you'll see in systems in this game is amazing. And there's so many cool things you can see and do with all of this stuff. So just really quickly, if I zoom in here a little bit, you can see, so there's a planet here. So this one, you can tell it's kind of a rocky, hard surface, but it does have some ice caps. And because you can kind of see this white line here on the left side around it, you can kind of tell that it has an atmosphere. You'll notice that these 3 next to it are also rocky. They don't have any ice caps. And there's no white line to the left. And so that's really quickly an indicator that they have no atmosphere. But another indicator is actually this blue halo here. And that blue halo signifies that that planet is landable. Like, I can actually go through and land on that planet. Because only atmosphereless worlds right now are available to land So you can see there's several planets in a row that are landable. But then I get to this one, and this one I can't land on anymore because this one has an atmosphere. It's kind of hard to see, but you can see just a slight kind of white line on the very, very outside of the planet. And that, again, signifying that it has an atmosphere. And the same thing for its moon as well. And then coming down here, you can see there's an asteroid belt that's orbiting this star, and then a variety of planets here that are, some of them are landable, and then others are not. Now, these darker worlds like this are either going to be heavy metal content planets, or they'll be rocky planets. Now, all of these four, just because from previous experience playing the game, these are all definitely heavy metal content planets. This one might be a rocky, but but I'm pretty sure that's going to be a heavy metal content planet as well. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to jump back into the ship, and then I'm going to jump into what's called Super Cruise, which is kind of localized faster-than-light travel. Allows me to travel faster than light within the system. It's not quite a jump. It's essentially creating like a bubble around the ship and then bending space around it in order to allow you to travel faster than the speed of light. And so I'm going to go to each of these planets here. I'm probably only going to do these first four, and that's because I know heavy metal content and planets are worth some money. Because all this exploration data, when I finally get back to the civilization, I get to sell it to one of the factions there. And then they pay me for, gathering all this information and so forth. And on a really long trip like this, where I'm spending, all of this time in order to get to the opposite side of the galaxy, you'll probably make a few $100 million, 2, 3, maybe 4. So you can make a decent amount of money, but there's also a lot of time invested. If money is your ultimate goal, exploration is not what you want to do. You're much better off doing something like bounty hunting or trading and stuff like that. And again, if you're interested in that, check out my Let's Play. I'll be starting that on Saturday. But so I just want to scan the ones that are really worth scanning. So I'm going to go through and scan these 4 here. And then I'm probably just going to go ahead and move on to the next system, because it's not worth spending the time to scan every single one of these, because as you'll see, it takes a bit of time in order to scan each one, and so forth. So I'm going to grab the closest one, or actually wait, I just realized that's probably not probably the closest one to me, not necessarily the closest one to the star. Oh, no, I have to take that back. That is the right one. Okay, cool. All right. So, yeah. So I'm going to head to that one, and I'm actually going to go ahead and increase my speed, and I'm going to click this again and engage scores.
4, 3, 2, 1, engage.
So, for those of you who may not be very familiar with the user interface of Elite Dangerous, I'll try to give you kind of a brief rundown of what all that looks like. Let me first get lined up here. And I'll kind of slow down a bit, so it takes a little bit of time to get to this planet. So, in the bottom center is your sensor, your scanner, radar, whatever you want to call it. And so you can see here, the planet that I'm aiming at is directly in front of me on the sensor. It's the one that's slightly gray instead of orange. And then all the other orange objects are either planets or stars. And you can kind of tell which one's which based off of how they look. The stars tend to be much larger and kind of have those, you kind of see the like solar flares and magnetic... what are those called? Those little arches that appear on the surface that are caused by magnetism within the star. And so you can kind of see that, and then the planets are just kind of circles with what looks like kind of continents on them. Granted, most of these planets don't have continents because they don't have any water, but you can kind of see that there in the sensor. Kind of tell the difference between the two. On just to the very right of the sensor is my throttle gauge. So you'll see if I throttle up, you're going to see it kind of increasing and showing my speed increasing there at the top right. And then if I throttle down, it'll, of course, slow down accordingly. To the left, just opposite of the speedometer and throttle gauge, is your temperature readout. Now, in most cases, especially in exploration, temperature is really not that much of a concern. The only time you really want to keep an eye on it is when you're doing fuel scooping. Since you're so close to the star, you have the potential to run into some overheating issues. I'll show that a bit more once we start jumping from system to system, and so I can kind of show you the fuel scooping process and all that. But that's where your temperature gauge is, and you can see the actual percentage of temperature. So right now I'm at 19% temperature. If it gets up to 100, that's the maximum amount of temperature that the ship can safely deal with. And if it goes beyond that, then my internal systems start taking damage. Now, off to the left of the sensor is your target details. You can see it shows kind of a little picture of the planet. Now, that is not a accurate image when it comes to planets. That's just a kind of mock-up of what the planet type could potentially look like. And then to the left of that is you see the name of the planet, which in this case is unexplored because I haven't done a detailed scan of it yet. And then it also would show some other information there. You'll see that populate here in just a second when I actually complete the scan. To the right of the sensors is my ship and sensor and power details. So immediately to the right you see my ship. It kind of shows the orientation. You'll notice like if I start moving around, the ship actually does kind of an exaggerated rotation in order to show you the direction that you would be rotating the ship. The three blue rings around it are my shields. So as my shields take damage, then the outside ring would start to decrease and change to red, and then the middle, and then the inside. And when they're all red, then your shields are down. Just below the ship, you'll see another bar that shows 100%, and that's my hull integrity. And so with that, you can see that I'm at 100% hull, which I'm glad because I'm on an exploration trip. I can't repair anywhere, so hopefully that stays that way. There are some potential hazards with exploration, and I can kind of cover that at some point. But for now, my ship's in perfect health, so I don't really need to be too concerned about it. Just to the right of the ship is my power distribution. And so right now I have, you have these little, they call them pips. And so you can see there's 4 dots just above engineering and 2 dots above systems. And so you have these 6 pips that you can dedicate to either systems, engine, or weapons. And that routes power from the power plant to those systems in order to provide more power. So if I provide more power to engines, then my ship handles a little better, and I get a little bit more speed out of the engine. If I give it to systems, then my shields will stay healthy longer and can deal with more damage coming in. As well as my thermal controls work a little better. If you have them to weapons, obviously, then your weapons are more powerful. They do a little bit more damage. They're able to fire more often, and so forth. And then you'll notice the bars just above each one of those. That's the buffer that system has, and that's how much power it has in the buffer. Now, in this case, all 3 of them are full. So if for whatever reason I needed to pull up my weapons and I started firing, then you would see the weapon one start to decrease. And since I have no pips to it, then it would not refill. And so once that buffer was depleted, then the weapons would no longer function. And then now it's not quite the same for engine and systems. If engine and systems run out of the power buffer, engine you're not allowed to boost anymore. Which is this sudden, you can hit the boost button and get a sudden burst of speed in order to, it also helps with turning as well. So you kind of give your entire thruster system's a burst of energy, and so for a very short period of time, you're able to go faster and turn faster. In systems, if the pips are down all the way, then your shields will not recharge, and your thermal systems won't work quite as well. They'll still slowly deplete or get rid of any thermal issues, but it'll take a lot longer. So it's just something to keep in mind. And I can change those at any time, so I can actually hit down on. You've got a hat switch, and that's the typical controls with the HOTAS setup. You can hit down, and that resets it, and so you can see that evenly distributes the power. And then I can go through and adjust power as I see fit in order to make sure that they're set up the way I want them. Okay, and then just to the right of your power distribution, you have some basic readouts for your system. And so at the top there, you'll see a fuel gauge, and you'll see two lines. So the top line, the one that's about half full right now, a little less than half full, that one is the current fuel buffer that are actually being actively used by the engines. And so right now, that fuel buffer is what it's currently using to send me around the system and for me to control the ship and so forth. And you'll see I'm currently using 1.57 units per hour. So I would use 1.5, a little over 1.5 of those buffers every hour if I just left my ship running in its current configuration. And then the thicker line just below that is my actual fuel tank. And so you can see my fuel tank has quite a bit of fuel remaining. It's almost full. There's like a little sliver there that's not. And so that's what the buffer will then use to pull fuel from in order to refresh itself when it runs out. Now, coming to the center of the screen, so of course you have the target in the center of the screen. That would change if I moved up and then targeted away. So now that goes away, and now it just shows I'm looking in that general direction. So it's like, oh hey, there's this target that I could target if I press the target in front of me button. And then so that's your direct target. There's not really any reticle without when you're not targeting that. So if I point away from the planet, you'll see it's just kind of empty. But just keep in mind that if you go through and you actually targeted something, if I rotate just a little bit up to where this planet over here is at the front, then you'll see that one now shows up, and I could actually target it if I wanted to. Then to the left and right of that are your weapons and or deployables. So you'll notice on the right it shows primary, and that just means primary fire group. And below it you see D scanner, and what that is it's our discovery scanner. I can go through and scan for systems or targets in the area, and so planets, moons, various other things with that, and you'll notice that it said no new astronomical objects discovered, and that's because I had already done a full discovery scan of this system. But you'll see me use that pretty regularly as I jump from system to system, and that basically allows you to discover all of the objects in the system, so that you're then able to target the ones that you want to make a detailed scan on. And that's what I just got done doing on the planet I was targeting previously. And so if I come back over to my system map here, you'll notice that so we've got this one now. So now this one shows a bunch of new information because we've done a detailed surface scan, and so it identified the specific thing here, and you'll notice that its name is the system name and then A1. And what that means is that it's the first planet orbiting the A star, because this is the A star and this would be the B star. And so this planet here would be B1. And so forth, and so that's how that would look. Now you'll notice, like, if I hover over one of the other planets, it still says just unexplored. It doesn't tell me any details. But this one, because I've done a detailed surface scan of the planet, it tells me the type of planet it is. So, like I said before, it's a high metal content world. Now this one could potentially be a... No, it's not. Okay, so I was kind of curious to see if this one had a potential for being a terraformable planet. It's a little close to the star, so I didn't think that would be the case, but it was still a possibility since it had an atmosphere. But in this case, it's not terraformable. If it was, it would show right here underneath the description of the planet. But then now you can also see a bunch of different information on the planet. So you can see its gravity, you can see how many atmospheres it has, and that's atmospheric pressure. Earth is obviously at ground level would be 1 atmosphere. So this one has a considerably heavier atmosphere than Earth, but a much, much lower gravity, which is interesting. That's not something you would typically expect to find. But it may be that this planet just happened to be in an area of the solar system when it formed that had a lot of excess gas, and that kind of collected on the planet. I would imagine a planet with this low a gravity is probably losing its atmosphere, so it may have been much thicker at some point or stuff like that. And that is stuff that the Frontier is kind of taken into account when they go through and render these systems. As a matter of fact, they have this really fascinating video that they showed about how the planet formations were actually calculated, and they even take into account like plate tectonics and volcanism and meteor impacts and various other things, and the way the planet looks is determined by the composition of materials that the procedural generation determined were in that system, and so forth. So it's really fascinating the length that they've gone to in order to try to make this as realistic as possible. I mean, obviously it's a game. They can't be 100% perfect, and I'm sure the procedural generation does create some errors or weird items. I know for a fact I've seen a planet that was an ice world right next to the star, and had a temperature that was much higher than what ice would form at. So obviously there's some things that can occur. Frontier tries to rectify some of those that are especially egregious, but there's just so many systems in the game they can't possibly fix every single one of them. But the system gets better and better as they've gone through and made the game. So it's pretty impressive what they've been able to do. So if you're at all interested in that, I definitely recommend you check out some of Frontier's videos that they've released. So at this point, I want to go ahead and target the next system, and so that I can get, like I said, I want to at least scan these 4, because if those are all high metal content planets, then they'll be worth more when I turn in all the information when I get back to the bubble of civilization. All right, so and that brings me back to the UI. So there was one thing I did forget to mention. So just to the top left of the sensor in the center is your targeting reticle, and that targeting reticle will tell you where you need to turn your ship in order to get your target directly in front of you. So right now, I don't have that system. So actually, let me move out of the way of that so it's not confusing. So right now, I have a planet targeted, and that planet is actually behind me and to the right. And the way I can tell that is with that little circle right next to the sensor, just to the top left. So you'll notice that the system, or that there's a little dot on it that's off to the right. So that immediately tells me that the system is to my right. So I need to make a turn to the right. So I'm going to go ahead and rotate my ship until that target is right above me. Now, I know it's behind me because that little dot there is hollow. And so if I pull my ship back in order to start rotating around, you're going to see that dot just switched over to being filled in. That means that the planet is now in front of me, and as you can see now, it just popped into view, and now it's directly in front of me, and I'm able to head towards it. So that's how you read the little targeting reticle there. you want to make sure the dot that you're targeting is solid and in the center of that little crosshair there. And that will allow you to always know where your target is. And that's very useful information because that'll help you if you're doing bounty hunting. It'll show you where your target is. If you lose sight of him, you can keep track of his general location with that, as well as with the sensor radar as well. And it also helps you when you're coming in to land at a station, because when you get into the station or close to it, the reticle will actually target your specific landing pad. And so that will tell you which direction you need to turn or move towards in order to get to your assigned landing pad. So that's something to keep in mind. And I'll be going over all of that in a lot more detail when I start my Let's Play series, and that again will be on Saturday. And I apologize, I keep mentioning that over and over again. I realize I'm kind of being a little more verbose than I probably should be. So anyways, so I'm just going to kind of give you some general guidelines on what I'm doing, when, and so forth, so you can kind of get an idea of various different things. So at this point, I'm going to get closer to the system because I have to be within a certain distance in order for the scan to initiate. So you'll see the distance just underneath there is in light seconds. So that's the distance that light travels in a single second. And I am essentially 300 times that distance right now. And then just below that is the estimated time of arrival. Now that is assuming I don't change my speed. But if my speed is changing, then that will obviously change. And I also don't want to go so fast that I overshoot the planet. And so what you want to do when you're targeting an object in Super Cruise is you want to make sure that the time to the location never gets below 7 or 8 seconds. If you get below that, then you're going too fast and your ship will overshoot. And you'll go flying past it, and then you'll have to turn around and make another attempt to get to it. Again, that's something that'll probably be easier to cover in the Let's Play because there's some things to take into consideration when you're approaching stations and stuff like that. So I'll go over all of that, so definitely check that out if you're interested. So I just completed a detailed scan. You can see it says detailed scan complete, additional data analysis complete. And so now I actually could go back to this system map and look at that system. And you'll see, okay, so I was right, it's another heavy metal or high metal content world. And you can see now its name, and like I said before, this is A1, this is A2, so it's the second planet on the A star in this system. And, I can come over here and we can see its surface gravity and Earth masses. It doesn't have an atmosphere. Of course, we already knew that because it had the little landable halo here. But you can also see, it has a rotational period of 1.6 days, so its rotation is a little more than 50% slower than Earth's, but its orbit its orbit's actually a little bit longer than Earth's too. So it takes 369 days in order for this to orbit around its star, where of course Earth is 356 or something like that. I can't remember. I'm going brain dead right now. 365. That's what it is. 365. So it's a little bit longer. It's by 4 days. And so now, again, I'm just going to go ahead and target the next system or the next planet because I'm pretty sure this is another high metal content world, and those are worth a bit more. For those of you who are interested in knowing how much planets are worth, there's a pretty good visual guide. Now, it's not 100% accurate because the developers have made a couple of changes to how much planets are worth and stuff like that over time in order to try to provide more incentives to explorers, and also to help try to make up for some of the income gap that explorers are experiencing versus other professions. But there's a really good visual guide to exploration in Elite Dangerous that actually shows you all the different types of planets and stars and so forth, and it shows you which ones are scoopable, and then also gives you a general idea on how much the planets are worth. And I can actually bring that up. If you give me just a second here. I'll bring that up on the stream so you can kind of see that. Let's see here. I believe that was in... I think it was in here. Yeah, there it is. All right. Did not mean for it to be that. There we go. And there we go. That's a little better. That's a little easier to see. So, so you can see here on the visual guide, you can see the types of stars that are scoopable. It's those, like I said, KGB foam, or in this case, it shows fog kabam. That also works. I always found KGB foam to be a little easier to remember. So you can see those. It also gives you kind of a general idea of how much stars are worth, like 12 to 1,500 credits. Again, those values are going to be a little different, but for the most part, it gives you a pretty good idea. Then you've got your planets on the right, so you can see metallic worlds, regular worlds, so in other words, water worlds, Earth-likes, and ammonias. Those are all going to be worth a ton of money, so you definitely want to make sure you scan those. You get your Jovians, which are your large gas giants, and then finally you have your rocky worlds, which are just rock and or ice worlds. Those you don't really need to scan. They're not worth the time it takes to scan them, which is one of the reasons why I'm kind of skipping scanning all of these other systems or all these other planets in this system, because it's just not worth putting in all the time and effort, especially considering I'm probably going to have scanned 5,000 different systems by the time I get back to Civilization after this trip. So, all right, so let me pull that back away and oh no, that's right. Okay. All right, so again, so I've targeted this system. I'm going to exit back in. So again, you can tick your sensor reticle. You can see it's to the top left of me and it's behind me. So I'm going to rotate around so that dot's right on top. And then I'm going to start turning my ship around until that dot gets in front of me. And so now I'm heading straight for that planet. So I can go through and go scan that one. One last thing on the UI, on the throttle display, you'll notice there's a section there that's highlighted blue. That is the location on your throttle where your ship has the best handling. So if I go below or above that, then my ship will turn much slower than it does if I'm in that blue bar. Now in Super Cruise it doesn't make as much of a difference, but in regular flight there's a huge difference. So that's what that blue bar is, and that's why your throttle will little icon there that moves up and down. That's why it changes blue there. That's kind of like the good area to be in if you want your ship to handle its best. As you can see, like I just hit 6. Now I'm going to throttle down, and luckily I was able to throttle down quick enough that it dropped back up to 7 or 8. But if I continued at 6, I would have gone flying past both of these systems, and I wouldn't have been able to slow down in time. And as you'll notice, you'll see that there's actually 2 dots here. So this is that binary pair of planets that I was talking about in there. So these 2 planets actually actively orbit each other. Oh, excuse me. And so once I'm done scanning this one, I'll just be able to rotate over to the other one, target it, and scan it immediately. Which is nice, because that speeds up my scanning time. So you can see I can kind of... is it not going to let me target it yet? For some reason, it's not letting me target that one. Alright. occasionally this will happen, like for whatever reason it still thinks the other target is too far in front, so I'm going to go ahead and just manually target it from my targets panel over here on the left. And so that'll let me scan that one as well. So if you, I just noticed a change, so just so you can kind of see. So if you take a look at my fuel gauge again, you'll notice the top bar, the little buffer, is now full again, and the bottom one has decreased slightly. And that was just that fuel buffer taking a section of fuel out of my main tank in order to fill up the buffers on the engines. So yeah, so now I've gotten both of those, and again, if I go to the system map here, I think we'll find that both of these, like I said, are high metal content planets. I could be mistaken, but I'm pretty sure. All right, so I was right on that one, and right on that one as well. So I've kind of gotten an idea of what those look like just because of what I've dealt with and like that visual guide. You can kind of see that there's some pretty obvious differences between one and the other. Rocky worlds sometimes look like high metal content planets, and then there's even some high metal content planets, and these are really irritating, that look like Earth-like worlds. And so you go and you get excited, and you go and you scan them, and you're like, it's high metal content, not an Earth-like. And I mean, it's still worth a decent amount of money, but high metal content or Earth-like worlds are worth obviously much more. Now, another thing you want to keep in mind is there's some other attributes that guide doesn't tell you, and that is if a planet is terraformable, and if I find one going through the couple of systems that I'm going through tonight, I'll be sure to point it out so you can kind of see where it is. If it's terraformable, it's worth a lot more. And then secondly, if you are the first person to discover and turn in the information. So like all of these planets, I have discovered them. However, you'll notice there's no tag of my name here. But if you look on this star here, and I just happened to notice this when I came into the system, you'll see that this was first discovered by Rip City Dubs. Right? So there was a user called Rip City Dubs who was the first person to jump in and scan this star. Now, for whatever reason, he didn't spend the time to scan the actual planets as well. So his name is not attached to these planets. So if I scan these planets and then make it back to the system before anyone else has scanned these planets and turned in the data, then I'll get my name attached to them. So everyone else who comes to the system afterwards will see, first discovered by ZeroGuardian. But if I scan them now and I head out on this big long trip that I'm going on, and someone else just happens to come through the system and scan it after me, but turns in the data first, then their name will get attached to the system. So that's just something to keep in mind when you're exploring. And if you are the first one to discover a system, and this is the really nice benefit of it, you get a 50% increase in the money that you make for that world. Or star or whatever. So it's a nice little boost in income when you're the first person to discover something. And it's really cool. It's nice to have your name attached to something, because they're talking about a 10-year plan for this game. And in 10 years, probably maybe 15 to 20% of the game will be, fully discovered by players, because there's just so many systems in the game that it would take probably 30 or 40 years for all of the systems to be discovered. And that's assuming every person playing the game right now stops what they're doing and goes exploring. I mean, there's literally that many systems. It just would take way too long. So there's always going to be a good chance that you can get your name attached to something, especially right now, because the game's only been out for a little over a year. And so there's still plenty of the galaxy. As a matter of fact, unfortunately, they've only released data once, but this was back in, I think, February or March of last year. And so it's, the data's a little old at this point. But the game had been out for 3-4 months, because it came out in December, but they didn't reset the discovery of the Gamma players, which was in November. So, yeah, about 3 or 4 months. And in that amount of time, I believe they had the players had discovered like 0.01% of the galaxy. I mean, it's a ridiculously small amount. Like it's yeah, and so as you can imagine, there's plenty of systems for everyone. So don't feel like you'll never get your name attached to something. Just pick a random direction and go there. You're bound to find something. Alright, so I've scanned all the planets that I wanted to in this system, so now I can go back to my route that I already have laid out, and if I go back to the galaxy map, you'll see my route is still plotted out there, which is good. And I think it's gone back to the 13 jump. I think it reset the cargo space the last time I opened the galaxy map, but that's okay. That's fine. I don't mind doing that. So one thing, and I kind of wanted to show y'all. I just realized I don't have it fired up. Let me fire this up. So one thing I highly recommend you use for this game, even if you're using a keyboard and mouse and you got all the buttons in the world, it just makes for a much easier time handling the game, because there's I don't know if you've seen the controls. Let me bring this up so you can just see like the ridiculous number of controls in this game. I mean, it's insane. There's so many things that you can do in this game, and so it'll take you a while to get used to all the controls that are in the game. But one thing that can make it infinitely easier for you is this little program called Voice Attack. And it's a program that literally monitors your voice, and if you say the right command, then it will do that action. And so you're going to see me use this quite a lot, especially during these streams, because there's just so many actions in the game that it takes, it can take a really long time to or it can take a really long time to get used to like what buttons do what after you configured it all. But then on top of that, there's a lot of situations where like a command that you only use occasionally is not really pertinent to put on a button that you have direct access to at all times. And so one of those commands that I have put into Voice Attack is the ability to go ahead and choose the next system in my on my route that I've plotted in the galaxy map. And so, and just to keep the command straightforward, I set it up so that if I say next system, and it recognizes just those words. Now, it's obviously not doing anything right now because I'm saying a bunch of other stuff as well. Then it will go ahead and select the next system in my route, and so I can go ahead and target towards that. So, if I did that right now, next system. All right, so you probably heard the little ding, and if I rotate around to the target now, that's in my reticle, you're going to see that now it's targeting the system, the next system in my route. And you can see here, it's 34.7 light years away. And then if you look down at my fuel gauge there on the right, you're going to see a section in blue. That's how much of my fuel tank it's going to absorb in order to power the engines in order to perform this jump. And so if that jump was only like 8 light years, then that blue section of the bar would be much, much smaller. I mean, it'd be probably like a 10th or 15th of that amount. Because the shorter the jump from your max range, the more efficient the system can be. But since this jump is fairly close to my maximum jump capacity, which is a little over 36 light years, then it uses up a really big chunk of fuel. Now, another command that I have added into the system is the ability to go ahead and initiate a warp jump. And for this command, I actually went through and added in some responses via Voice Attack. So when I say the command, it will actually go through and respond to me. And so I'll show you that right now. Jump.
Accelerating to warp speed.
And so as you can see, it responded with accelerating to warp speed. Voice attack, for that kind of stuff, you can very easily set up essentially a text-to-speech functionality, and it just reads whatever text you put in there as the response in your computer's voice. There are a ton of voice attack, like pre-made packs that you can download online. There's a lot of really cool, those voice packs that they have. There's a lot of really cool voice actors that have gone through and done, like recorded audio responses and stuff like that. Which is all really neat and everything. I wanted a little more customization on mine, which means I had to use the text-to-speech engine, which means that the voice that actually reads it off is very computerized and it doesn't feel as smooth. There are some websites that you can purchase new text-to-speech voices for your computers, but they tend to be pretty expensive. In some cases, like even $50 or more. But if that's something you're interested in, that is absolutely available online. You can do that. If you spend a lot of time in the game, I could certainly understand why you would do that, because it would certainly add to kind of your immersion and so forth. So as you can see, I just jumped into this system here, and so I'm going to really quickly do a discovery scan of the system to find out how many objects are in the system. So you can see there in the top right, it got discovered 21 new astronomical objects. Now, that number will also include the various sections of, like, asteroid belts, because asteroid belts aren't typically, even all the way through. They tend to be in kind of, little bursts of items, especially in Elite Dangerous. They haven't actually come up with a good way to do an asteroid belt that is really fills up that little area. So in the game, they're a little different. But since I've finished the discovery scan of the system, I'm going to go ahead and target the sun so I can do a full detail scan of the sun. That'll give me more details on the star and as well, so that I can turn that in when I get back to the bubble. And while it's completing that, I'm going to come over and look at the system map. Alright, so we pull up the system map, and as you can see here, we've got several large Jovian worlds, as well as several moons on them. So we've got the star. It looks like this star was also discovered by another player, Lagertha. But Lagertha did not decide to spend the time to scan the Jovian planets or the moons. Now, I probably will not scan the moons either, because again, icy and rocky worlds, which most of these are going to be, are not really worth the time. But I'm going to go ahead and scan these Jovians, and I'm especially interested in kind of doing a close flyby of the two large ones with rings, because I've always really enjoyed the way rings look in this game. So I'll probably do that really quick, and I'll probably wrap up the stream after I finish doing the scan of this system, because that'll give you a good idea of like how the system works. Oh, and first I'll do a fuel scoop before I go check out the planet, so you can kind of see that process as well. So I'm going to go ahead and target this one. And then, but before I head to that planet, so I am going to go ahead and rotate around so that dot is in the right location. But before I start heading to the planet, I'm going to do a fuel scoop. So now your fuel scoop, thankfully, just auto deploys and auto retracts. So all I have to do is get close enough to the star. And I'm going to kind of throttle up here. You don't want to go very quickly. If you go too quickly, you're going to dive towards the star. You're going to get forced out of super cruise. You'll damage your ship. Not good. But you'll see in the top now, you'll see a fuel rate. So that's the rate at which I'm scooping up hydrogen into my tank. And then heat level.
Fuel scooping complete.
And you'll see the heat level is slowly increasing. I've completed my fuel scoop. And so now I'm going to... position my ship up so that I can get away from the star, and then once I get it far enough away, then the heat will start to decrease.
Disengaged.
And you can see that in my heat meter there to the left of the sensor radar, that the heat is going down now that I'm further away from the star. Now, just so you know, I will tell you I am using a very high-end fuel scoop that is only available on the larger ships. and so it's able to scoop up much more hydrogen at a time than most other fuel scoops can. So if you're playing with something like an Asp Explorer or something along those lines, the rate at which yours is able to fuel scoop is going to be much slower than that. So just keep that in mind in case you were wondering why your scooping was very different than what mine is showing. So anyways, now that we're topped up on fuel, I'm heading towards that first Jovian world, and so we'll come get close in and take a look at this. I'm interested to see what the ring system looks like, because I know in this game some systems or some planets you'll find have these enormous ring systems that just stretch out for huge distances, and it's always really, really cool to see those. So hopefully we'll get lucky in one of these 2 Jovians. We'll have a really nice ring system in it. Oh, I did not mean to do that. Now, you may have noticed that the Jovian started to allow me to scan it much, much further away than the small planets did. And that's because, of course, the Jovian is much, much larger, so it's much easier for the scanners to detect light and emissions from the planet than it is from some of those moons and so forth that I had been scanning previously. So, yeah, so here we come in. So, yeah, it's a pretty decent ring system. It's not great. I've seen much larger. But I'm going to go ahead and come in a little closer, do a little bit of a flyby here, because I kind of like what I'm seeing on the planet itself. It's got some really nice ring or stripe structures on the galaxy, or on the gas giant. I'm kind of curious to see those up close. So you can actually tell what the composition of the rings are, and as we get closer, it may be a little difficult to see right now, but as we get closer, you're going to see that there's actually a set of kind of brownish gray rings that are just on the inside. So you have all the white ones on the outside, and then on the inside there's kind of some brownish gray ones. So that kind of gives you an indication as to the composition of what the rings are. So those brownish gray ones are going to be composed mostly of rocky and metal particulates and asteroids, whereas the white ones are going to be all icy, asteroids and particulates. And so let me get a little closer in here. Now, one really cool thing, and this is something that y'all may not realize, like, you're looking at this gas giant and you may be thinking, oh wow, some artist did a really cool job on that. Actually, no artist created that apart from the systems that they created for the procedural generation. All of the graphics that you're seeing for the planets and so forth are procedurally generated. And so, that I got to give my hats off to Frontier on this, because, for a computer to be able to come up with these beautiful images like this is really, really cool. So, one thing that I think I'm going to do here is I'm going to kind of get a little closer to the rings here. I'm going to kind of speed up a little bit. Alright. And now I'm going to kind of aim to kind of fly across the rings like so. And slow down just a little bit. And then I'm going to go into the debug camera, I can take a screenshot of this because this looks really nice. Now, Elite Dangerous has a built-in screenshot system. It also has the ability to do a high-res screenshot. To where if you're running 1080p, it'll do a 4K screenshot. Now, I'm running a 4K monitor, so most of my screenshots are already 4K by default. But if I do the high res, then it'll actually quadruple a 4K, so it's a massive image. It's actually pretty cool that the game actually supports something along those lines, because I certainly wouldn't have expected a game like this to. Alright. Now, you can already see that that blue gas giant that didn't have any wings is actually right there. So we'll go ahead and target and scan that. I didn't notice it on the system map, but it must have been that these two were orbiting pairs. That, or we just happened to be lucky enough that their orbits were right next to each other, and they just happened to be in that location in the orbit. But so that one doesn't have any moons, but it is a really pretty blue color. So let's see if I can get just a little bit closer. I'm just going to kind of fly by it pretty quickly, but. Pretty planet. I love the art and everything in this game. It's amazing. Alright, and then we're going to go ahead and target the last gas giant in the planet, or the system, excuse me, and head towards that. Now, for future reference, I'm not going to do this whole spiel like I did in this video. I wanted to do that in this video because the last video I was trying to be a little more concentrating on the launch of the whole Distant Worlds expedition, so I was trying to pay attention to the TeamSpeak server, which unfortunately didn't get included in the video like it was supposed to. So the whole video just seems to be me laughing out loud continuously. For no apparent reason, but you know, hey, that's streaming for you. There's always going to be glitches and so forth. I do apologize about that. Hopefully, in the future, I'll be able to avoid that situation. I definitely had it rectified for today, but today I wanted to concentrate on, you know, kind of explaining like how the game works, how exploration works, and that way I can always refer you back to this video in the future. Should you have any questions about like why I'm doing certain things or how I'm doing it, stuff like that. Moving forward, with each additional video I do on Distant Worlds, I will probably just be doing the systems, going to each system, scanning it, and so forth. So during that time period, if you have any questions, feel free to jump into the chat room, let me know, hit me up. You're also welcome to join our forums. It's forums.spacepotatoes.com. And if you have any questions, you're welcome to post them there. And we can look in, you know, I can help you out, or, you know, you're welcome to, we have a regularly scheduled game night there as well, so you might look into that as well. We'd be happy to have additional people joining us. And so yeah, I mean, there's all kinds of fun stuff to do, especially on the forums. Lots of good people there, and a lot of people playing games, especially PC-centric, mostly PC-centric. Not all of it, but mostly. Oh yeah, look at that. God, that looks awesome. I love the kind of texture of the clouds there and so forth. One thing that probably will happen at some point in the future of Elite Dangerous is, I know that they've talked about it in the past, the developers want to make it to where you can actually go into the atmospheres on gas giants, at least the external portions of the atmospheres, and be able to do fuel scooping there, which won't be quite as efficient because there's not as much hydrogen there, but it will be safer because there's not as much heat. And then there's also the possibility of seeing some really cool cloud formations and stuff like that. I'd actually imagine that they'll probably do that before they actually allow us to do full atmospheric landings, because that'll give them an opportunity to have a system in place for cloud generation. Because I know they want to have like full weather systems and all that stuff working properly on Earth-like worlds and water worlds and stuff like that. When they eventually allow us to go land on those planets and everything in the future. So I really hope Frontier, giving them the best of luck for all that, because I know they've got this really ambitious plan for everything, and I really hope they're able to achieve it. It's what they've achieved so far, is just awesome. So, anyways. So, alright, well, I'm going to go ahead and target the next system here and jump over there. I hope you've enjoyed the stream, and again, if you have any questions, definitely hit us up. Let me go ahead and target the system really quick. Next system. Alright, and then if you do have, like I said, if you have any questions, definitely hit me up in the chat. You're welcome to join us on the forums. Don't forget to join me on Friday. Friday I'm going to be playing Rise of the Triad. That's going to be at 10 a.m. I'm really looking forward to that. It should be a lot of fun. Just throwback to an old school style shooter. Been looking forward to playing that for a while now. So hopefully that'll pan out. Friday I'll also try to have the schedule for the next week ready to go. So I can mention it in the video so you know what games we'll be playing next week. I know for a fact that one of those will be Tomb Raider. So it's the first game in the new remake of Tomb Raider, because I have not played that yet. So it's not the newest one, which unfortunately I don't have yet. And I haven't played like I said, I haven't played the first one in the new series, so I don't want to skip one. But I know I'll be playing that next week, but I don't know what the other game will be. But of course, definitely join us for that, and don't forget about the Let's Play on Saturday. Saturday 2 p.m. I'll be doing a Let's Play starting from scratch in Elite Dangerous in a Sidewinder, so you'll get to see just how to get started in this game and kind of work your way up to to better ships and like if you've played the game and you just feel lost, that'll be the stream for you. So anyways, this is ZeroGuardian. I'm signing off. I appreciate you joining me, and I'll see you next time.